looking at the Daniel situation, thinking about it, getting a lot of feedback. And first of all, I wanted to thank you, Daniel, for putting yourself out there. I don't think Daniel wants to do any more interviews after this. His feelings are hurt. I have a lot of track laid down with him. He gave me a lot of evidence that showed me that he was real. So I wanted to give you my commentary on this now after hearing it. The first thing I would say to you is that we really just reheard the Stitchin Sumerian text, Gerald Clark. Not so much Gerald Clark, because Gerald Clark takes it into a spiritual dimension much further than anything that we heard, that I've ever heard from Stitchin. He takes it another level further, which makes me like Gerald. But anyway, Daniel was giving us, I think, the Anunnaki perspective. Do I think the Anunnaki perspective is the truth? No, I do not. Let me make a couple points about this first. Number one, anybody who puts up stuff about Daniel not being in the military, I want to debunk all of that right now, and that's the reason why I've been burning it off my site, because it's just not true. Daniel gets VA assistance in his home. They come in and they actually do medical treatment on him in his home. The VA does, after a fight to get his medical records back, or his DD-214 records back, and things like that, okay? So what Daniel, what that says is you cannot get medical benefits from the VA without having been in the military. So just because something is printed on the internet doesn't make it true. And I don't necessarily buy everything that my guests say, just so you know. But I wanted to hear the story because it was told in a dimension or a way that I hadn't heard before, and the continuity of Daniel's message, like it or not, was pretty good. And the second thing that I liked about Daniel's message was, as I got to know him better and everything like that, he's a good dude. And he actually says he has Jesus in his heart. He asked Jesus to come in his heart. So all these things like that, okay? He's like childlike in one way and adorable, but just this massive brain and this massive intellect on the other. It's kind of interesting, really. So what do I think about the Anunnaki? I do think the Anunnaki are real, by the way. I think that's proven beyond a reasonable doubt as it relates to the scriptures and the Sumerian texts and all those things. So let's just get past that, okay? Because here's what happened. In Genesis chapter 6, the Watchers came down, as it says, and they made it with women. They took wives. Then their offspring were called giants that basically were men of renown, and at one point it's even suggests that they were rulers of the world. So they're super high intellect, super big, super strong, super smart, but they are giants and they keep growing, and it was a genetic anomaly, and it was one of the reasons why the Anunnaki weren't supposed to come here. Because here's what I think. This is what Steve Olson personally thinks. What I personally think is that the Anunnaki, reptilian, gray, Nordic, whatever races or species that are messing with us right now and that are manipulating us to feed off of us or whatever sick purposes that they have, I believe I believe with all of my heart that none of those races are God. None of those races can claim existent. None of those races can claim being the ruler of the universe. None of those, no matter what their stories are. But let's address this fallen angel thing. If Daniel indeed is half Nephilim, that doesn't mean that he's half fallen angel. Because if you read your Bibles, please go look in Matthew where it talks about that angels cannot procreate. That's right, angels can't procreate. So whatever demonic forces, principalities, powers, and high places, apparently, if those are angels, they can't procreate. So what were those Watchers that came down in Genesis chapter 6? Were they fallen angels? Or were they really another race of people, i.e. the Anunnaki? Or some other race? Or maybe a combination of races? So that's kind of where I'm coming down on it. So when Yeshua came, after all of this prison and all of this hatred, self-hatred, being under the dominion of others, because, by the way, I don't believe the Anunnaki for a minute upgraded our DNA. I believe they downgraded our DNA. Because the Bible tells us that, and I want to make a point from that. Remember how on the Old Testament, in the Sumerian text, they talk about people living for 600 years, 900 years, 1,000 years, maybe even more, human beings in the Bible? How is it an upgrade to go to a 800 year lifespan to a 100-year lifespan? How is it an upgrade, and I know what Wayne Steiger says about this, but how is it an upgrade to go from, from 100% use of your spiritual potential and your brain and all of the functioning circuits of the human body in unison with God, the Creator, to 10% of our brain and barely able to see what God looks like? So tell me how that is a genetic upgrade. So that's the lie. The lie is that they didn't upgrade us, they downgraded us. And God came to save us. And that's what Yeshua came to do, was to break the lie and say God is not this murderous tyrant. God is not this thing that is at war at constantly. There is no such thing as love and war coexisting. So if God is love, how can there be war in him? There is no war in him. So what's going to happen, and what Jesus came to tell us, Yeshua came to tell us, was this is what God is really like. God is love. And love is the essence of the whole universe. It is God. God is love. So what's happening is the human race is being rescued from the Anunnaki. It's being rescued from all of these different races so that we can have the liberty and sovereignty as the human race in perfect relationship with God.